Welcome to Whittlesea. Unusual walk today. I'm going to try and walk from Whittlesea Station back to my base in Orton Wistow via the waterways, via the dykes. Should be fun, should be interesting. Never done anything like this before. We'll see what we can find on the way. It's quite a trek, so I'm going to get going. And we're going to start with a sort of south-westerly suburb of Whittlesea known as Briggate. Oh, well, we'll be there in a few minutes anyway. That's our starting point. Interesting how the station's called Whittlesea with an EA, but the town's called Whittlesea with an EY. More on that one later on. It's the Railway Inn. Dates back, I presume, to when the railway opened. That would have been about 1846, I think it was. Used to be the Railway Hotel. Not sure it's still a hotel, I think it's just a pub now. But early maps show it as the Railway Hotel. That wall over there, the tall wall, unmistakably the village pound or the town pound, probably one of many. Actually says the pound on the gate. I didn't read that, I saw it on a map. But it's in Great Nick, where they used to put the stray animals, if there were any. Probably dates back 150 years. Now somebody's garden. Very nice. Quite early in the morning. There's a lot of dog walkers around at the moment. Bless them. This is a hot spot for dog walkers down by the river. It's dog walking time, I guess. Coming up to the waterway, which will in effect follow for about 12 miles back to my base, in theory. If I had a boat, I could actually do this walk a lot easier, but I don't. I have to use the legs today. We're looking east here at what is the Whittlesea Dyke, and it travels across country to Whittlesea from the eastern side as the Whittlesea Dyke, and 200-300 years ago on old maps it carried on past Whittlesea all the way to Stanground under the same name of Whittlesea Dyke. It's been renamed in various sections now, but it is in effect the same drain. Worth bearing that in mind for what we're about to see on the other side of this bridge, which is the Briggate River, which is actually the Whittlesea Dyke, but locally it's known as the Briggate River. That's Ashline Sluice or Ashline Lock, if you prefer. I think there's a drop of about 7 or 8 foot, I read somewhere, in the water coming down from Whittlesea, which is in the distance. It's been around a long time. There's references to this lock in 1770 in one of the local newspapers of that time. So I can't give you a date as to when it was built, but it's old. Obviously been modernised a few times since then. To the left there is the lock keeper's cottage. Again, it's been done up a few times, but it's been around a long time as well. You used to get that for free if you were the lock keeper. But I suspect back in the busy days of barges and lighters, whatever, coming up here, he had a busy job as lock keeper, so getting a free house is probably a reasonable part of the deal. Let's go and have a wander. Proper barge. back in the day everything was horse-drawn, and we're walking along the towpath at the moment of where horses used to pull barges and lighters laden with goods. No idea why it's called Ash Line Lock actually. I did try to find out. It was suggested maybe there was a line of ash trees down here at one point, and that's where it came from. I can't think of any better way of guessing where it came from. Seems to make sense. You'll notice the trees start to overhang down here. We've got a sort of tunnel of trees. That's known, certainly in Old English terms, as a bower, and this is known by many locals as the Bower rather than Briggate River. And they like to have a walk, the locals, down the Bower, and you can see why. It's a very scenic walk. But the Bower is really referring to the trees ahead of us and the tunnel that they in effect create. But it's a very nice place, very picturesque. Now, it starts to get quite interesting for me a bit further along, because this waterway swings right, and it shouldn't swing right. It never did swing right 300 years ago, but it was a man-made reroute to take this waterway closer to the town centre before hooking back down and rejoining its original course shortly afterwards. But it was it was hooked right towards the town centre so it could take its cargo closer to the sort of cargo warehouses and whatever of Briggate. We should see that kink in the water very shortly. The small suburb, if I can call it that, of Briggate was actually hailed as Whittlesea's port because of this little rerouting of the waterway here. They had wharves alongside the waterway. They could offload product from horse-drawn lighters and barges, and they could also load them up. And that's what Briggate became famous for, a little commercial centre of Whittlesea. We've got an old Second World War pillbox coming up here just ahead of us, but this is the kink in the river. This is the man-made reroute going off to the right where this pillbox is. Hard to imagine, but sometime around the mid-1700s or possibly even earlier, this waterway, the Whittlesea Dyke as it was, went straight on. It went exactly straight on past that pillbox. The swing right now is the reroute. I guess the pillbox was there because of some degree of strategic importance with the waterways, although kind of hard to imagine that there'd be some sort of invasion force coming up the waterway, but there had to be a reason for it being here. In good condition. Yeah, so the Dyke used to go down there, believe it or not, straight on, but that was about 300 years ago at least. And this is the rerouted section, so from pretty much here onwards there would be commercial premises lining the Briggate River with wharves, granaries, storage places and whatever. Hard to imagine with it being so quiet, but this was the port, or Whittlesea's port. So if you can see that sign over there, sharp bend ahead. It's actually the sharpest bend I read on any waterway in the UK, and it seems quite ridiculous that somebody built this little reroute and built this right angular bend at the end of this to get back on to the original waterway. Why didn't they make it a bit smoother? I don't know whether they never intended traffic to go west from here, only east, but yeah, it's quite remarkable, as you'll see shortly. As ever, if I've got any old pictures, I will be popping them up left, right and centre so you can sort of see what this world looked like 100 years ago. Hasn't changed a whole lot. It'll give you a flavour. There's very little remaining that can point at the sort of days of the commercial centre and the wharves, but you can see the sides of the river are lined. It's quite solid. That wooden bridge used to be a brick bridge, I do know that. I have got a picture of that, so it fell into disrepair. Right, let's have a look at this kink in the river. That's where we've come from. Imagine bringing one of those big canal barges down here under this bridge and then suddenly, bang, bit of a left turn. And as I say, it's known as and is recorded as the sharpest turn on any UK waterway. Why did they do that? Man-made. I think Mother Nature would have done it better. Building on the right, which says Medivet, used to be a pub, used to be the Hero of Allywell. I think there were several Hero of Allywells. This was the last one standing. Hero of Allywell refers to Sir Harry Smith, after whom the school or college is named after. Senior British soldier in the War of the Sikhs. Brave man, much loved here in Whittlesea, very proud of him. And yeah, that was the pub. I had to do a detour here because I know I've got an old picture from this exact spot, which I'll put up. We're alongside the boat pub. A lot of those old buildings are gone, but this is the same view. Briggate West. So this is still a man-made section. This is still sort of trying to take this reroute back to where it should have been in the first place. Date stamp of 1770 on that one. That's old. Seen a few things. Right, we're now coming to where Whittlesea Dyke used to flow from the left, more or less through that house on our left, which you can't really see. But yeah, coming across here was where the Whittlesea Dyke used to flow, and this is where our man-made reroute rejoins the course as we head out towards Stanground. Certainly a very pretty river, whether you call it the Whittlesea Dyke or whether you call it the Briggate River. I think the Briggate River name stretches about another half a mile down to the west before it reverts back to being just a dyke. Very nice on a morning like this. Barge with an L plate on it. Different. Put up a few pictures now of what used to be the Briggate River bathing place. Opened in 1912 to sort of celebrate the coronation of King George V. So they opened a bathing place for villagers to come and bathe. There's none of these sort of building regional pools or lidos. They come and jump in the river. And yeah, that area over there where it sort of is a recess on the bank, that's where it was. So we're sort of on the opposite side of the river to those photographs, but yeah, that used to be the Briggate River bathing place. Long gone. Not sure I'd want to swim in there now. Not sure what that is. We've certainly been here a long time. It's like some sort of gate post. Baylis Jones Limited, Wolverhampton. Up in the distance we've got the railway viaduct. Didn't go down too well with the locals of Briggate when this was built because they had to keep damming the water up. And nothing flowed through Briggate itself, which you might think is no big deal, apart from the issues that might have caused with any sort of river traffic, but they actually used it as their main water source up until certainly in the 1850s. They were using it as a main water source, and I'm sure it went on a long time after that as well. And the thought of them drinking this water, yeah, that's kind of hard to get my head around, but they did. And so, yeah, when they stopped the water flowing to build this viaduct, it hit the local papers. I've read a few of the comments and they weren't happy. Great Eastern Railway. Like going through a jungle now. Pretty overgrown, hard to believe underneath all this. There was a towpath because sometimes hard to imagine when you're sort of going back in time a wee bit with waterways like this, that the traffic that moved along here, I call them barges, but I think they were called lighters to give them their correct name. They were hauled by horses, and the horses would be walking just slightly to my right now on the towpath and dragging these barges, lighters, full of product along the water. Right, a lengthy freight liner train behind me. Chance to mention, oh God, there's a gigantic rut in this path that goes down about a foot, and it's easy to just fall in it, so I mustn't do that. Right, now we've escaped the dog walkers, I can tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that we've seen already, starting off with the station really, which is known as Whittlesea with an EA on the end, which is a bit weird because nowadays Whittlesea's got an EY on the end, and I read somewhere, true or not, it seemed bona fide that the station's called Whittlesea with an EA because when the paperwork was done, and I don't know when this was, and we're not talking about when the station was built, probably when it was modified. So relatively recently, the paperwork had Whittlesea with an EA on the end, in error, but it was too late to change it by the time that somebody stepped forward and said, actually, whoops, I meant Whittlesea with an EY, it's too late. Whatever is done and was done, and it's stayed as Whittlesea ever since. Now I've been told by many people it used to be called Whittlesea with an EA, it's now Whittlesea with an EY, but that isn't true. I mean, I can tell you that isn't true. You can go back 200 years, 300 years, as I have done, in old journals and old newspapers, and they used Whittlesea with an EY back then just as much as they use Whittlesea with an EA. So I think it's just an interpretation. It's probably dates back to the sort of semi-illiterate times when people wrote down what they thought somebody had said, and it's an irrelevance really. It's a bit like the Nene and the Nene really. Both Whittlesea with an EY and Whittlesea with an EA are perfectly valid. names. One is not older than the other. You take your pick. It's mostly EY nowadays, but if you go back to Domesday Book and beyond, it was neither. It was something completely different. The EY and the EA on the end is sort of Old English for island, and Whittlesea is an island, basically, or was an island in the fen days when it was very marshy around here. Places like Ely and Whittlesea and Thorney were islands, and that's where the EY or EA comes from. But you can call it whichever one you want, and as far as the station's concerned, it'll always be Whittlesea with an EA, and why not? I mentioned earlier about the names of this waterway. I mean, it's Whittlesea Dyke, full stop. It's Whittlesea Dyke all the way from a long way east of Whittlesea all the way to Stanground. And if you go back to the 1700s, on the very few old maps that exist from those days, it's clearly marked Whittlesea Dyke all the way, which makes sense. But obviously they called it the Briggate River for that section, and slightly beyond that section it goes around Briggate, and pretty much where we are now onwards towards Stanground. We now refer to it as King's Dyke, but it is really, it's all the same waterway. It's Whittlesea Dyke under various different names. The thing that intrigues me and annoys me in equal parts along this so-called towpath that we're currently on, I don't know if you can make it out, but down there there's like a rut, and it's man-made, and it runs all the way along the path, so every few seconds you fall in it, and it's quite a long way down. It's about a foot deep. So if anyone knows what the purpose of this rut is, I'd be quite interested in knowing. Oh, looks like we're escaping the jungle. Can't say it's particularly attractive, but a bit good for the feet. Oh, that's better. Don't know whether this is some sort of flood defences. Can't be much else. I didn't explain earlier on what on earth I'm actually doing today, apart from walking from Whittlesea to Peterborough. I mean, why would I want to do that? One of the frustrations of doing local walks is for me anyways, I have to drive to the starting point, which means I've got to end at the starting point because that's where my car is. I was watching one of my many sort of walking YouTube channels, not one of mine, but somebody else's that I enjoy watching, and he was doing a walk where he had actually jumped on a train, as I did this morning. I went out to a station, jumped off at the station and walked home, and that way you could do a sort of A to B walk as opposed to a circular walk, and I thought, well, I'll do that. I'll try that, and the nearest station is Whittlesea, so it had to be Whittlesea. And then I saw the river and I saw the footpath. I thought I could do most of this walk without walking on main roads. I've got to walk on some roads, sadly. I've got to walk along the side, the A605, not too far ahead, but for the most part I've tried to keep off the main roads, and this is a wonderful stretch, so I'm really pleased with this walk along the river, and I hope to do one or two more of these if I can work out exactly how to get to wherever I need to get to walk back. So that's why I'm doing it really. It's just an A to B walk as opposed to a circular walk, and it's a part of the world I've never been walking through before. I've always got negative things to say about anything east of Peterborough. I don't really like fen landscapes, it's too flat and boring, but I wanted to try and put that right today and perhaps have a slightly more positive outlook, and so far I have a more positive outlook because this is lovely walking along here. Really nice. I don't know if you can see over in the distance with those big wind turbines and the traffic and the sort of steep bank, just to give you some idea of where the hell we are. We're sort of, that's the bypass road around the old railway crossing at King's Dyke. That's more or less where we're coming up to. I don't know about you, but it seems to create more traffic going around this bypass than it ever did going across the crossing, but I never did it that often, so I'm probably wrong to say that. But yeah, that's where we are in the King's Dyke area, walking along the King's Dyke. Still a few smoking chimneys from the old brickworks, I mean, I went past the site on the train, they're still digging it out, still digging some clay out. It's still alive as a brickworks, it would seem, but only just. Most of it's all grassed over now, and I think being turned into, or hopefully being turned into, a nature reserve. I was trying to plan out and understand elements of this walk. I was trying to work out what King's Dyke, the settlement of King's Dyke, the village, if you want to call it that, it's actually a hamlet, according to Wikipedia. Just trying to understand a little bit about the background of King's Dyke, and I couldn't really work out whether King's Dyke predated the brickworks in any way, i.e. was there before the brickworks got going, or whether it was born from the brickworks and was for people who worked at the brickworks, a bit like the way that New England in Peterborough was really there for the railway workers. Was King's Dyke simply a place where some of the brickworkers lived? I don't know. If you know the answer to that, if it's got a history that predates the brickworks, then add a comment underneath the video, because I'd like to know, and I couldn't find it. I did try, I did search, and I couldn't find any answers. So yeah, if you've got anything you can share with us about pre-brickwork King's Dyke hamlet, yeah, throw some comments in and I'll be keen to read those. As teasels go, these are absolute clonkers. You could do a few of these at Christmas time in the old silver spray paint. Yeah, wonderful things. The beasts of King's Dyke. Hello, mate. You ain't coming with me. I thought I'd got some partners for the walk. Well, I have actually. You coming with me or not? Say hi. Eh? I seem to have made a friend here who wants to come with me on the walk, and got visions of heading into Peterborough soon with a dog. Has she gone now? She might have gone now, hopefully. Anything to get on a video. There's a better view across towards King's Dyke. And a flooded brick pit in the foreground. I'm sure she thinks I'm taking her for a walk, and I'm not. It's not walkies time. You need to go home, mate. You are drifting a long way from home. Go on. Go on, off you go. We go. I think the foreground's better than the background, but it is what it is. And yes, my doggy friend is still following me, and I don't know how to get rid of her. Hey, get off my camera, you. Ooh. Looks like we might be losing the Dyke. Having passed King's Dyke hamlet, we seem to be coming rather close to the A605. I suspect this is where we're going to have to jump on the footpath, if there is one, and move forward. Unfortunately, I can't stay with the Dyke. Certainly at this point, I can't get underneath the 605, and there's no footpath. footpath over the other side. Go. Right, just not too long a stretch on here before we get off it. Thank God. A cafe, no less. Tempted to stop for a cuppa, but not on the side of this road. Thank you very much. You can probably see this better than me as I'm holding the camera above my head, but we're still alongside King's Dyke, Whittlesea Dyke, whatever you want to call it, which was the theme of this walk, really, to try and stay close to the waterways all the way in and through Peterborough. It's still there, I just can't get alongside it. For the dog lovers out there, the dog did turn around and go back after about 1.25 miles of walking with me. Obviously a lot more sensible than I thought she was. Still following King's Dyke as we head towards Stanground. Blimey, don't see many of those wandering along the A605. I've just turned off briefly on the road to Ponders Bridge just to show you something. Well, it's one of these things where I'm going to chunter on for a little bit and you've really got nothing to see. That sort of raised ground and trees in the distance, that, believe it or not, is an old 1600s Civil War, what do you want to call it, fort, military camp, whatever, defensive establishment. It was built by Cromwellian sort of parliamentarian forces because the royalists were quite nearby and they thought they were going to be heading this way, and this is quite a big intersection both of tracks, roads, call them what you will, and waterways, as we've seen, and they figured if the royalists were going to come this way, they would load this fort up, probably with troops from Cromwell's, stronghold in Huntingdon. They'd load this fort up and it would be a formidable defensive establishment. It never saw action because it never happened, but the site's still there, but you just can't really see anything apart from what you're looking at from here. I will try, if I can find one, put up an aerial photograph so you can see the sort of shape of what is surviving, which is just sort of earthworks really. And if I can't find an aerial photograph, I'll put up something from a map that shows the outline of it. But it should be known about. It's 1600s, Civil War. Everybody drives past this, or a lot of people drive past it every day and don't know it's here. But it's in those trees, it's private, you can't get in there, and there probably would be nothing to see anyway. But worthy of a mention, in my opinion. Right, having crossed the Ponders Bridge Road, and I'm standing underneath the A605 now. This is not King's Dyke, this is the old River Nene. This is where the River Nene used to flow before we had that long, straight, featureless section that runs to the Dog in a Doublet. This is the original River Nene, and it headed south from here past Yaxley, right down to what in the old days was the Whittlesea Mere, a sort of 6 mile by 4 mile natural lake, thought by many to have been formed by this river silting up and blocking itself and creating the mere. I don't know if that's true, but this is the old River Nene, and you can take your boat down here and you can follow it all the way around to where the River Nene still ends up at today, which is Wisbeach. But this is a very long meandering route that goes right down south and back up through Upwell, I think it is, to Wisbeach. A much more scenic version of the Nene than the one we have now, but yeah, this is the original, but obviously it was a long route, if you like, to get to Wisbeach and the ports and out to the Wash. So it was decided to build, I think they built an original one called Morton's Leam, which is still there today, which is dead straight and runs to the Dog in a Doublet, but it's only a small one. They then decided we'll do a bigger version of that, can't remember what it was called. I think it was Smith's Lean or something like that, which is the one we've got today. A much wider, straight waterway out through the Dog in a Doublet out to Wisbeach and out to the Wash. So that's what we know as the Nene today, but this is the original. This is the old River Nene, and this one will take us into the back side, for want of a better expression, of Stanground, in theory, if I can find a path. Let's go see. We're through the A605 and out the other side now. Stanground, Park Farm, whatever, is to our left. And I'm going to try and flirt around the outside edge if I can, avoiding roads. Fingers crossed. Getting warm. No idea where I'm going really here. Some relatively recent Ordnance Survey maps showed that you could walk on footpaths around the edge of this part of the country, which we are very much on at the moment, but what with the building of Park Farm, and then as we go a little bit further, the building of this sort of embankment, the sort of south side of the embankment and all the new stuff there. A lot of those tracks have now gone, so it's a case of following noses now, or following my nose. I've only got one, but yeah, I'm going to follow my nose and hopefully stay close to the water and somehow find my way through onto London Road. That's the theory. Okay, that's Horsey Lock, and disappearing under Horsey Lock and in the direction we've just walked from, as we previously mentioned, that's the old River Nene, down at my feet now, heading right. In the distance, the good old King's Dyke that we followed all the way along from the Briggate River, and that sort of continues. But once again, we have a bit of a name change here. Heads left towards Peterborough, towards Stanground. That's kind of known as Canutes Dyke now, although a lot of maps say Canutes Dyke or King's Dyke, depending which one you want to choose. Some of them call it the Back River as well at Stanground, which I think is a little bit further on. I like Canutes Dyke. It's named after King Canute, 11th century king of England. Rumour has it he built this. Did he really? But the theory is he built it because he came along here on his boat with his family, then he headed right here down what was then the River Nene, because the new River Nene wasn't built then obviously, and he ended up in Whittlesea Mere, and as soon as he hit Whittlesea Mere he hit a storm or a squall. The boat sank and certain members of his family died. I think his wife died. It's a bit sketchy, but certain members of his family died and he thought, bugger it, not having that again. So in theory, he built a dyke, which is, well, I'm not sure whether it's King's Dyke or whether it was another dyke. Looking on old 1600s maps, which are never very reliable, there seems to be another dyke that heads off just down here, just off King's Dyke, that heads down to the right as well, but didn't go down to Whittlesea Mere. It stayed above it and swung round to rejoin the course of Whittlesea Dyke. Now I don't know if any of that is true at all, but certainly the name Canutes Dyke must have originated from something, and that's the legend. Probably a load of rubbish. So we're now going to be walking alongside Canutes Dyke and round the back of Stanground or Park Farm. Another very pleasing walk down here. Well, it's a riverside stroll alongside Park Farm. I find myself wandering along here doing the most bizarre of things in trying to second guess and work out what was in the head of King Canute, who was King of England, I think it was in 1016, and the legend of Canutes Dyke. I mean, this is Canutes Dyke. It's survived through all the maps that I've got, and it is called Canutes Dyke. The legend about him losing family at Whittlesea Mere, no reason to doubt that was true, and I could quite understand how he would want to build a bypass, if you like, around Whittlesea Mere. That all makes sense to me. It's just trying to work out where is Canutes Dyke after Horsey Toll, because it can't be the old course of the Nene, because that would have took him back to Whittlesea Mere. It can only have been straight on, and that would have been what we know today as King's Dyke or Whittlesea Dyke. So maybe Canutes Dyke really was Whittlesea Dyke, but I just don't know the history of Whittlesea Dyke, King's Dyke, how long it's been around, to what degree it's man-made, to what degree it's natural. I just don't know. If anybody does know, they must have had their own versions of Canutes Dyke stroke Whittlesea Dyke stroke King's Dyke, then please do post your comments under the video, because I will be interested, very interested. I wonder how old these willows are. Certainly a lot older than Park Farm next to it. It would date back a while. Very nice. Intrigued by all these willows, because I didn't think this area is that old, and the trees look older, and yet if this path was not here, I wouldn't have thought somebody would come along here and plant willows, and they're sort of equally spaced out, so it's sort of man planted, it's not natural. Very strange. They're obviously not as old as I thought, or maybe where I'm walking is a lot older than I was giving it credit for. Right, trying to burrow my way round into or onto Stanground Lock now, which is the sort of start of Canutes Dyke, or end if you prefer. I prefer to call it the start, where it hits the junction with other waterways. I'll try and find a way of getting there. It wasn't easy, a bit of a long route to get round and up onto Stanground Lock, but we got there. I was trying to get a shot of it from further away, but it's just the undergrowth, call it what you will. The hedges were too thick, but we'll see what we can grab. Stanground Lock and the start of Canutes Dyke and the start of the route to Whittlesea. Right, looking down off the back of Stanground Lock onto the opposite side, you've got what's known as Stanground Backwater disappearing into the distance, and you can see the back end of Stanground, which I don't think I'm going to be able to get to. I'm going to end up going down the road. I might be wrong. I don't think there's any footpaths that are riverside down there, which is a shame. It's mostly sort of boat yards down there, always used to be. But this waterway branching off, I believe, is Morton's Leam, and this was the first attempt made to anything bypass the old River Nene. This is dead straight and heads across towards Doggin a Doublet, and I think, putting two and two together, I think it was deemed to be such a success they wanted to do a bigger one, a bigger version of this. and that just sits, I don't know, about 200 yards into the distance across those fields, which is the River Nene as we know it today. So Morton's Leam became fairly redundant, really. I don't think it's used for a whole lot now. And the main River Nene, as I say, is across those fields. And I just clambered down on the back of Stanground Lock with Morton's Leam over there. And Stanground Backwater heading to our left. There looks to be a sort of track stroke pathway here, so I'm going to follow it, stay with the river. It's going in the right direction. Where it comes out I have no idea. Probably somewhere in Stanground, near Riverside, the Riverside in Stanground. Fingers crossed. Yeah, we're coming into the back of Stanground. And it's getting windy. What a scenic setting with cattle in the meadows, waterways, willows. You'd never believe it was Peterborough. Right, Stanground. I can't tell you too much about what's going to be down here. I sort of hope to be by the river rather than picking out the history of these buildings, but looking at some date stones, 1897. There was a lot of businesses going back like 70, 80, 90, 100 years. A lot of riverside businesses down here. A lot of boat makers. A lot of businesses who made use of the river one way or another. And there's probably one or two still surviving, which we'll probably see as we go down. North Street, just so you can get your bearings. Just going to have to read whatever's on the houses, really. (1897) again, late 1800s. Well, there's one up here with the pointy roof that looks a darn sight older than the 1890s. I can guarantee you that's older. That's nice. If I can find something out about that one, I'll put the date on the bottom of the screen, but it's certainly older than 1897, that's for sure. The old anchor. Very nice. Guarantee that had a thatch once. There you go, a boatyard. I knew there'd be one still surviving. I think there were loads of these here once. Mixture of old and new down here. Another 1897 Woodston cottages. It seems to be the year for North Street builds, 1897. You know, that sign has been moved from the other side of the road, or is directed at the other side of the road. I can't really see that there was a pub there. There's nothing there to have been a pub. But it looks like a pub sign. Maybe it wasn't. The wall pack. Still going strong. I'll put a date up for that if I can find one. Another date stamp on this white building. 1897 maybe. That'll be a shocker. Actually looks a bit older. It is 1828. Certainly is older. Heading up Mount Pleasant, I think it's called. Trying to find my way around to the church because I know I've got to go past the church to stick to my route. Stanground Church. St John's Stanground. Done a few weddings there. Should be heading down to where one of the Peterborough Images Facebook, or most popular Facebook header photographs was taken of the boys by the stream and the chopper bike. I don't know if the stream is still down here or whether it's culverted or what, but it was somewhere down here. Yeah, it's been bridged over now, so I can't sort of reenact the photograph. It would have been down there. The stream still runs through, but under a bridge now. Certainly wouldn't look as cute now as it did in that photograph. Stanground Lode, this is called. Just to keep up the waterways theme. And I think we'll be able to follow this. Rather nice. It's part of the backwater really, it's Stanground. It kind of just meanders around itself down this end of Stanground. Very nice. Very nice to live on that opposite bank as well. Some very nice properties, especially if you have the fishing rights as well. I'm trying to find my way to Black Bridge. And I have no map apart from what's in my head, but I think if I follow this waterway on my right, it should lead me there, in theory. This is it. Black Bridge. Let's go around the other side because I might be able to see it better from there. It carries the railway, the Great Eastern Railway, over Stanground Backwater. I've got some classic video I'll put up now of this burning down. Most people that were around Peterborough at the time will remember that. It used to be a wooden bridge coated in creosote and tarmac in order to protect it, but of course that's extremely flammable stuff. And I don't know how it caught light, maybe it was a train, I don't know. But once it got going, you were never going to put it out. Never. And they didn't. And it burnt down. As you can see, all nicely decorated now, in a nice silver and black theme. And looking back towards Stanground from under Black Bridge, and you will recognise the other side, the river is the bottom end of the embankment. Right, well, we're alongside the Nene, so we're still following waterways. Would still be here in my virtual boat, but I have no idea where this path goes. There was a time you could walk all the way along the river, pretty much into town, but we're going to collide with the South Bank development sometime soon, I would have thought, and then we'll be on the roads, no doubt. Don't think I'll bother climbing that. Under the Parkway Bridge. Well, we're alongside the railway, so I guess back in the day we'd be pretty much walking into Peterborough East Station. I really should have done an old map and worked this out more accurately, but the station would have been pretty much up ahead. What it must have been as the railway's next to me. See the remains of the old mill, I think, over on the right. Looks in a poor state, but I think it is, for what it's worth, protected in inverted commas. Very modern buildings, a lot of these, but they're not the ugliest of buildings, I must say. And coming up ahead on the right is a throwback to the Great Eastern Railway Station and sheds that were here. Good to see them still standing and protected. Very important that they kept these, otherwise there'd have been nothing left of the old station. Plenty of old buildings there, old sheds. Good to see. I'm intrigued. I've got to go down here and have a look at what else is down here. We'll make an effort. This is nice.
I'm not defending myself fully, I'm being a boss.
It's nice down here. I can do this. Bewitched Coffee. Used to be an engine shed, I presume. Crazy. That's all that remains of, was it Whitworth's mill, which is preserved. I don't know if they're going to do something with it. Doesn't seem to be a lot of point in preserving it if it's falling down. Huge building, and clearly from the graffiti some people have been inside of it, rather them than me. Let's hope it survives in some form. It doesn't look in too good a state. Can't see what's over that one. See if I can stick the camera over the top, at least you can see. Might be a struggle. It's like walking through some sort of Spanish seaside resort with all these balconies. I wonder how much they cost. Right, into P-Town on London Road. Just wanted to stop and show you something here, if I can get across the road. Take a look at this old photograph of what was the Great Eastern Railway level crossing, which was in this area. A magnificent thing, but a pain in the ass too. That down there, you can see that concrete bit of road that runs up to the railway, headed off by a fence now. That is where the crossing was, just behind that fence. The road is still there, it just doesn't go anywhere now. Let's get back on the river. We're going to dive into Hill's Yard in a moment. I'll put up some old pictures of Hill's Yard, or in particular a picture of it in flood, because it always used to flood down here. The river has now got firm metal concrete banks. It didn't 100 years ago. It was a natural bank, and as such it flooded a lot, and all these buildings here, what was here previously, was quite used to getting flooded. I'm pretty sure buildings didn't have insurance back then like they do nowadays. So we're going to enter Hill's Yard. It's still here. The entrance is still here, unchanged.
What's that, mate?
Hill's Yard. And those flooded buildings would have been to our right now. Downstream on the Nene. Upstream on the Nene. That's a magnificent iron bridge. You see these wooden bases of some structures all along here. I presume there's some sort of, I don't know, wharf, wooden platform of some sort at the side of the river before it was all concrete. Right, take a look at this. This is Woodston Wharf. It's the only picture I've got, it's the only picture I've ever seen of Woodston Wharf. This is where the tidal River Nene used to reach. It was tidal downstream from Woodston Wharf, fresh water above it. But as you'll see on the far bank, it was also a place where they offloaded from a bunch of railway sidings off the what we now call the Nene Valley Railway. There's a bunch of sidings here and a shed, and they would load up barge traffic and presumably pick up from barge traffic too. Now this picture's taken on the opposite bank to where we now are, but there is still surviving bits and bobs from the wharf, and I've clambered through the bushes, and down here you have a few bits and pieces from the old wharf still surviving at the side of the river here. There's not a lot. Most of it's been levelled and broken up. But there's still bits and bobs here from Woodston Wharf. Some bits and bobs. Used to hold the wharf together, no doubt. Some pretty mighty big pieces of ironwork. Not a whole lot to see now. few bits of wood, a few bits of ironwork. That's all that's left of Woodston Wharf. Right, before my battery runs out, just coming up towards Ferry Meadows Station now. So I've done my trek, thoroughly enjoyed it. Probably didn't come across in video as well as it did in reality, but I hope you enjoyed some of it. As ever, if there's anything you want to add comments on, put me right on, explain things on, then please add comments under the video, either on Peterborough Images or on YouTube. But as I say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. East of Peterborough's not that bad after all, and the waterways around Stamford are great fun as well. So enjoyed it on a lovely morning, rolling into afternoon now. I hope you enjoyed some of it. As I say, and thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.